everybody, it's what's in our pantry. Fletcher ditched me again, which is fine. I'm not going to hold it against him because he's 4. But I am going to make today one of my new favorites. I finally had the time to start making it, and it's my gluten-free bone broth bread that I got out of this cookbook. And I love this cookbook. It is the Bone Broth Secret, and this is what I do to all my cookbooks. I put tabs on the recipes that I like and write what it is, so I'm not going to hunt and I'm not having to relook at my cookbooks. So there's a little tip for you can steal from me. So, and I've adapted that recipe based off of what I have in my pantry, so the recipe doesn't look exact, and I change it up pretty much every single time based off of what I've got in my pantry. So to get started, I'm going to start with my dry ingredients first. And the recipe itself calls for flax meal, but I don't have it. But I do have psyllium husk, which most of you probably don't have in your pantry. I just randomly had it because it's really good for your gut. But you can use, if you're not gluten-free, you could use wheat flour. I mean, really just substitute anything you want in it. And I found it works beautifully every single time. So I've got 3 tablespoons of that here. I'm going to throw that in. A 1/4 cup of almond flour. And I've also doubled this recipe, and it works awesome too. So I like making just a bigger batch to start with. Then I've got a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of ground pepper. And there's a lot more herbs that you can put in this too. I've put in dried basil, dried rosemary, and it gives just a great flavor to it. So have some fun with it. Then I've got a teaspoon of baking soda here. And that is it for my dry ingredients. Actually, I'm going to do a little turmeric there. So I'm going to just sprinkle in there about a 1/2 teaspoon or so, maybe a little more. I really like that flavor, so I like to get a little wild with it. All right, so I'm going to mix that together. Doesn't look like much so far, but it is going to make a nice loaf of bread. And what I do is I put, after it cools from the oven, I slice it up, and I put half of the batch in the freezer so that I can just have a slice or so a day, and I'm not worried about it going bad before I finish it. And then I put the other half in the refrigerator. All right, so I'm going to start adding my wet ingredients. I've got 4 tablespoons of coconut oil. Now, the actual recipe says 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm out of butter, so I'm just going to wing it. Most days I'm out of butter. So I don't eat very much butter here. All right, I'm going to put that in there. The actual recipe calls for coconut butter. I have never even used coconut butter, so I'm going to use almond butter, and I use this every single time, and the recipe comes out delicious. So again, whatever type of butter you have in your pantry, just substitute it. You could even use sunflower butter if you've got that, or cashew butter. They're all delicious, and it's going to come out tasting fantastic. I really think recipes are just kind of an idea to get you going, and then you use what you have. That way you're not having random ingredients that you're never using. All right, so this is mixing together wonderfully. All right, the secret ingredient, even though it's in the title, is bone broth. So I have a beef broth. It's a kind of a tricky thing to say, a tongue twister. Beef bone broth that I made. It's really gelatinous and beautiful and holds together great. If you don't make your own bone broth, or you just have some in your freezer or fridge or pantry, whatever you have, just use it in its place. So I have that. I've been having a lot of fun making my own bone broths. I usually make chicken every week anyway, but I had some beef bones in the freezer that I wanted to finally start using, so I did. And then 2 eggs. So I'm gonna add these little eggs, and these are room temperature, but I've also used them cold. You know, I just really don't sweat it in the kitchen. It's whatever's happening now and whatever I have. So I'm going to mix that all together. And that's it. Oh, and you can add a little honey too. Add a little sweetness to it. So a couple of ways that I love doing this bread is in the morning, I'll put a little bit of yogurt on top, plain yogurt. And I have it as just a nice little savory dish in the morning. I've also put hummus on it. In some of my Burger Fit Friday videos, I've used it and put hummus and Burger Fit burgers on it. I mean, you can really use it any way you want to. So I'm going to just stir this up really, really good. And if your coconut oil if it's hard, you can also put this in the food processor if you need some help getting it blended easily. Sometimes those ingredients are a little bit harder, so mixing it makes it difficult. So my recommendation, throw it in the food processor. Even my almond butter has been pretty difficult to work with if it's the bottom of the jar where all the oils has already seeped up, so it's really cakey at the bottom. So, you know, throwing it in the food processor will help blend all those ingredients together. Now, I've also had happen where I didn't blend it very well and I had little chunks of almond butter throughout. Tasted great too. No big deal. All right, this is looking fantastic. And it's not going to rise very much, and even if it rises some, it's going to settle back down. So really what you see is what you get in the pan. So if you have a really deep pan, you know, you could double the recipe in there. I just cook it for a little bit longer than it's recommended. I've got the oven preheating on 300 right now. Now, I'm not going to make you sit here and wait the entire time I'm baking it. I'm going to shut off live, and then we'll post pictures and do a follow-up video when I'm taking it out of the oven. But just make sure it's really blended nice in here. That coconut oil, it's feisty in there. Probably should have used the food processor for it. It's a chilly day this morning in Tennessee, so it was a lot of my, you know, out on the counter kind of ingredients were a little harder. All right, that's mixed together, it looks like. So I've got my bread pan here, and I use just a regular bread pan. I've got some olive oil I've already put around the sides. If you don't have olive oil, you can use butter, coconut oil, you know, whatever you like working with. I like using olive oil in this instance because it's already liquid in liquid form, so it makes it easier to spread it around. So just make sure it's in all those corners really, really well. Awesome, that looks great. So got my pan nice and oiled so nothing sticks to it. I'm gonna move some of this out of my way. We've got our bread batter, bread dough, whatever you want to call it. And I'm gonna just start pouring it in here. Now, the more gelatinous your beef or your broth is, you can use chicken broth. You don't have to use beef. You can use whatever bone broth that you make or have. They say the better texture it is because it's able to hold together. And that's why you also leave it in the refrigerator, because if you leave broth out room temperature, then that's when it turns into a liquid. So helps just hold it together. But this morning I did put it in the oven on broil to get it toasted. Oh, and you know what I did last night for dinner? I made a gluten-free pasta dish the other night, and I thought it'd be really good with some garlic bread. So I put some crushed garlic on top and put it in the oven on broil to get nice and toasty and warm, and it was fantastic. So super easy gluten-free bread. A lot of us, if you're gluten-free, have those ingredients already in your pantry. And usually my shirt, by the end of this, I've got bread batter all over me. It makes me laugh and whatever, I don't care. So now I'm gonna throw this in the oven. I'm gonna put it, like I said, 300 for about 35 minutes. I'm gonna start checking. Now it may take up to 50 minutes. If I double the recipe, it's definitely at least 50 minutes. So I'm gonna stick this in here, and we'll be back to show you the delicious bread that it turns out to be. And this is what's in my pantry. All right, so the bread's been cooking for about 45 minutes or so. For the last 5 minutes, it still wasn't browning on top, so I bumped it up to 350 to get it nice and brown. The middle was done, I checked it. So I'm gonna get it out of the oven now, and it smells amazing in my kitchen. I can't wait to eat it. I've got my lid handle envies here to get it out. They're so versatile, I love them. And then this is the beautiful bread. See how brown it is on top now. It doesn't really rise very much. I'm gonna close that oven and turn it off. So now I've got my cool-in rack here, and if you don't have a cool-in rack, you could do a trivet or even just put it on the counter, however you usually cool things. And they recommend waiting to take the bread out until it's fully cooled. So I'm gonna leave it alone, and we will post pictures of it all sliced and ready to eat, and it is so delicious. I can't even decide how I'm gonna eat the first slice, but I think I might do some yogurt with some honey and vanilla mixed in with it. I don't know, we'll see.